Whoa, Dad, go, Dad.
That's right. Welcome to Whoa Dad, Go Dad. My name's Dave Momper. I'm your host. This is a fatherhood podcast for new dads and soon-to-be dads. I'm a new dad myself, and I'm asking every day, great dads, what does it take? What does it truly take to take on the ultimate role? All right, let's get to it. Mr. Kipp Adler, welcome to Whoa Dad, Go Dad.
Hey, Dave Momper. Thanks for having me.
Such a pleasure to be with you, buddy.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've been eager listener since you started, and it's exciting to be in it now.
Right on, right on. So for our listeners, you and I have had the good fortune of being a part of the Creative Mornings Denver community for, I don't know, when do you think your first attendance was to that event?
I know when
Year-wise.
it was. It stood out to me. Well, I don't know the month, but I was fresh in Denver, so it had to be late, like post-October 2019. And you all had, and that was very humble the way you said we were both parts of the community as you were leading the event
Yeah.
and running things. But I remember showing up to, I don't remember the location, but there was Voodoo Donuts
Okay.
and just an amazing energy to the whole event that really just drew me in. And I remember just being like, oh, this is cool. I could see this being a thing I attend, and I have been, except it shut down for however long in
Right, right.
person after that.
Yeah, we did a lot of stuff virtually during the COVID years. So
Hmm
2019, Voodoo Donuts. I wonder where that might have been. We had them all over
It
the
was like a
place.
panel.
Was it?
There was a woman named Vanessa, I believe, spoke about
Oh, yeah.
marketing. There was another gentleman. I don't remember, but it was different than what you or what we normally did.
Maybe it was our audience takes the stage. Does that sound possible?
That sounds right.
It was probably at McNichols, possibly. But either way, a lot of cool venues, a lot of cool people, donuts, coffee, croissants, who knows? We mixed it up all the time. And then, to be honest, let's be honest, you were a guest speaker at one point as well. Do you remember your
Yes, that
theme? What was your theme?
the power of listening,
Well, that
power
was your
of
talk. That was your talk. What was the
the
theme of the
theme,
month? I'm trying to remember the theme.
simplicity.
Simplicity.
Yes, and the answer was that it was a lesson that I had learned, my wife and I learned together, that the source of most arguments or disagreements with people that truly care about each other is a misunderstanding. And
Totally.
so,
Yes. Well, it was a great talk, and appreciate you stepping up and serving the community with some wisdom. And I think the reason perhaps that you joined or attended Creative Mornings is because you are a creative human being. You're a
yeah.
director, producer, international documentarian, content creator. Describe to anyone tapping into this right now some of the work you've done over time, some of the places it's taken you, and perhaps your goals or intentions with this kind of work.
Yeah, great. Well, you did a great job of describing what I do. That is what I do. I have, and I've sort of, being a creative, a lot of us have a wide ranging of interests. So I have never specialized. I have at times been a documentary filmmaker, at times been a corporate marketing video director or producer. I started off as a journalist, like actually, like, you know, being a correspondent in the Middle East, and kind of have been all over the map. I think I'm not a favorites kind of person, but I think I most enjoy documentary or journalism. And I have primarily, I mean, that's been the bulk of my work over the years, because you basically get to know and talk to and like just ask any question you want to people that are worth putting on camera. And so I find it, I love people, I love stories, I love exploring cultures, topics, and ideas. And yeah, that's been some of the best.
Right on. And to be a correspondent or a journalist or a documentarian in the Middle East, like what a storied location in our world, historically, and of course, front and center right now. I mean, what are the lessons you take from your time as a journalist, meeting so many interesting people, diverse people, stories of probably beauty, of hardship. Like, what about that role have you gleaned and infused into your fatherhood ways?
Well, that's a good question. Um, well, I think so. This also sort of answers the question that you originally asked of like the types of experiences I've had, and then I'll connect that into fatherhood. But I think, yeah, like I did have the opportunity, especially working in the Middle East. I was based in Tel Aviv for many years. That's where I started out. And so just there's a lot of religion and culture and both things working cohesively and telling stories about that and things working less cohesively and the stories behind that. If we're all familiar with, that region and a lot of the challenges that it faces. And it was my job, and maybe annoyingly so to the people that I would interview, but to really like, I don't, it's hard for me to just hear answers that don't really, like, I can't do anything with. So I would dig into people's life story and ask them questions and kind of their personal and emotional or psychological state as they were going on any number of just exploration of the human condition that was worth broadcasting. And it just really, I think it taught me primarily that like the similarities that we all have of, I mean, it's if anybody else is in the storytelling industry or in a storytelling industry, I think we understand that there really is only one story. Like, that like there's an arc. I mean, obviously there's a lot of stories, but it's like it's really, like person has a desire, encounters struggle, faces opposition, overcomes opposition, or doesn't, and is changed in the process. And just to sort of be able to just see just the overlap of just interviewing people from so many different walks of life and
Hmm.
realizing that we're all kind of experiencing the same thing and want the same things. Um, and then I think also part of that is that my job as a director, the person interviewing them is, they need to be natural on camera. We need to be engaging. This needs to be real.
Hmm.
So then I need to find myself in their story. And like, actually, I've learned it's best and you get the best answers out of people when I can actually find a point of connection and I'm truly interested in what they're talking about. And limitedly so can even chime in and say, oh yeah, that makes me think of this. And like it becomes a conversation. And so that added level of just sort of that mental exercise of finding myself in their story taught me a lot about listening and finding overlap and learning how two very different people can just be the same for a minute. Um, and I think that works very well with fatherhood and children because you're trying to relate. I'm trying to relate to a 2-year-old and a 4-month-old right now. So we're in different worlds, and it's I'm not always the best at it. Slow down. Wait, what are they experiencing right now? What is my daughter? What is my son experiencing? And how do I meet them there? And that's it's I would say it's been the I would say challenge or not challenge the skill of fatherhood that I feel like I've been working very hard at learning.
Hmm. Right on. It sounds like you're speaking of perhaps the hero's journey, some people refer to it as.
Yeah.
And you said everyone is effectively working towards the same thing. What is that thing? If we were to be guides along our children's own individual hero's journey, they're in pursuit of something categorically that everyone is in pursuit of. What is that categorical destination or objective we're all going for? If we had that frame of reference, we can be of service in theory to our kiddos better. What's your sense of what that is after so many interviews and so many different people?
So you're asking a big question, and I'm happy to answer it. My answer will undoubtedly be incomplete. That's my caveat.
Okay.
But the things that are coming to mind as I'm just kind of like pouring through story is um, fulfillment and connection. I think
Wow.
most stories kind of come down to that. Someone's in pursuit. Like, why do people make sacrifices to do great things that are, that we want to film and tell a story about? Because they're, you know, whatever, maybe making money is not enough. I'm sure it motivates, a lot of these things, but maybe money's not enough. Maybe, just having something to occupy your time isn't enough. People want some, it's one of these ineffable things. Like what is that we all want that's beyond what we see, but people are looking for that fulfillment, I think. I mean, that's across the board. And so I think people will latch on to varying things that give them that, but they're often in pursuit of something beyond, something bigger. And then often connection. I mean, a lot of people, we get down to trying to make the world a more connected place by helping people who need it, or there's some family struggle. And I mean, I had the privilege of like watching two sisters reconnect and solve a miscommunication from like decades prior on camera, because you just ask questions trying to, you know, make a good documentary, and they're like, oh, we hadn't thought about that. And then the sister's like, oh, wait, but I thought wait, what? You know?
Mm.
And then like, that was essentially what the story was about, was this woman's relationship with her family, and how her decisions impacted them. So yeah, just seeing people want to connect. They want acceptance. They want alliances with people that believe in similar things. I think we're all in pursuit of that.
I feel like there's, bear with me. There's maybe a third thing that struck me as like, uh, I don't know if it's honor. There's fulfillment, connection, and then almost like doing the right thing or the virtuous thing or the
Yeah.
worthy thing that's hard, but that the world needs out of us, as like a categorical thing that's going to show up for a lot of different people. But I could see fulfillment, but some people still pursue arduous paths in life, and it's not for them, right? And it's not to connect with others necessarily. It's like to do, to be virtuous or to like, you know, change the world or something like that. But
Yeah.
and then as you were saying that, I thought you were helping, for instance, in this example of the two sisters, but frankly, any viewer of any of your work, you're helping people make sense of the world. And perhaps
Yeah.
the participants or your interviewees you're helping them make sense of the issue, or you're trying to make sense of it too. I just wonder, is maybe that part of the ultimate role of fatherhood, is to help these little nuggets make sense of what it means to live their life. And that's going to be customized, tailored to them. And we want to almost listen to them and get to know them. But perhaps that's an objective of all of us, to about us as fathers, as mothers, as parents, is to help our kiddos make sense of the world and then do something, perhaps as the hero's journey took us to, related to fulfillment, related to connections, and related to something noble or honorable.
I think that's very insightful. And I mean, we know each other pretty decently beyond the creative mornings experiences. We've had our share of coffees and beers together. And yeah, it was very insightful. It's definitely something that I connect with. And I was putting the pieces together as you were saying it. And I can affirm that, yes, that is a big, I mean, that's like the huge, right? Like, we're trying in some, I mean, we have a perspective, we have a vantage point that our children do not have. We have the years, we have the cerebral cortex,
Mm.
at least at this stage. And so we're trying to help them make sense of it. And it goes back to this theme that has been sort of just this theme that I've noticed throughout my experience as a father, which is knowing how much I shape their world and how much I'm allow them to shape it themselves, I guess. And that goes both for like physical interactions with the world, like how much I'm protecting them or stopping them from things, and how much I'm just, letting them do it. And also just perception, just like how much am I saying, oh, this is that, this means that, or how much am I saying, well, what do you think this means?
Cool.
And I don't think that there's a sweet spot necessarily for that. It's like this constant dance, because in one sense, like I think our role as fathers is to help them define the world. And, they don't have the framework to understand things. We have to teach them colors. We have to teach them, certain pattern recognition and things like that. So it's certainly our duty to teach our children to an extent. But also, I think we're missing out on something if we don't allow them just to, us to see how their unique mind interprets what they're experiencing beyond what we can see.
So true. I wrote down directing versus guiding, like directing them versus guiding. Would those be the two, or would you call it something different as contrasts?
Well, what does that mean to you? I'm interested.
Well, direction would be like you have to do it this way. Guiding would be like, well, how do you think you should do it?
Yeah, I think so. I'm trying to think how I would categorize those things. Yeah, I mean, because I've thought of it as this. I'll say this, and then I like the question. It's a good question to explore. I like that. The way I've sort of seen it, um, that I'd be interested in hearing how you connect that to what you just described of guiding or directing is am I a support for them? Like my personal belief is as a father, it's like perhaps my primary role, and I think I already said that about something else. So I guess there's a lot of primary roles.
Sure, yeah.
But one of the chief roles is to just support. I don't know. Have you? It's made its way around the internet. There's this video of this woman chef on some chef competition. It's like a reel that goes around, and she's trying to open this jar, and she goes to her dad, and then she eventually runs to her dad in the audience, and
That's
he,
right.
yeah. So he just sort of just stoically just pops it open, hands it back to her, and lets his daughter do her thing.
Yep.
And like that video has gotten me emotional at various times.
Totally.
Uh, because I see that as like, okay, I am here to support, I have a daughter and son. I'm here to support what they want to become and what they do. At the same time, they may have certain desires that I don't think are helpful for them, or certain behaviors that maybe if we tweaked a little bit would be more useful to them. So I want to be that support and just be like, hey, you want to be this, I'm here for it. How can I help you? So that might be the guiding side of things. Whereas then the directing is like, okay, well, if you want to do that, then how do we accomplish that? I've learned a few things in the, almost 39 years that I've been around. Uh, Here's what I would suggest, but I always want to put kind of a question to it.
Right.
Like, here's what I would suggest. What is that? How does that work for you? What would you do differently or the same as what I'm suggesting? That's
And
the directing.
I think that's so key because I feel like our role is to not grant them as though we hold it and they don't get it unless we grant it, but to bestow or grant or reveal to them individual agency.
Yeah.
Because one day we said this as we were warming up, like we're going to be living in different places than our kids, physical homes perhaps. We're going to be dead and they're going to be on their own and they need to be independent and self-sufficient and all this. So I just feel like, we're guiding them towards agency. And
Yeah.
I was struck by when you said, colors and so forth. They probably know they don't know that it's called blue, but they know that's a color or that their senses are gathering a color in contrast to green or red. But so we don't need to point out that there are colors, but we need to
Yeah.
perhaps guide them to the language that helps us all identify colors and distinguish between them. So we need to teach them blue, but we don't need to teach them colors. And I just wonder what in life are we as parents like let them uncover certain things and then crystallize it for them or like clarify it for them, but giving them agency to really be the observer and make sense of the world, but then to put a little polish on it for them.
I think
And
so. Or at the very least, give them something to contend with. Be like, hey, this is how I see it. What do you think? Like
awesome.
to
Oh,
give them
cool.
some polish. Like it's like I want to learn from my children also, and I think that's I'm sure you can relate. That's kind of part of it. We were just talking about that also in the warm up of like seeing our kids learn to walk and like going up a hill, going down a hill. It's like, oh right, that's a challenge. That was a challenge at some point. That has some weight to it. It's something that we overlook, when we're 6 foot whatever and have been walking for decades.
Yep.
Uh, it's like, oh right, these are observed. I'm reminded of things about life that maybe I wouldn't be privy to if I wasn't seeing it through their eyes.
True. And like literally, even though walking seems it's basic, it's fundamental, but it is like this iterative thing. Because my son Leonidas started walking. He just turned one, 10-1. We're recording today on what is today, the 14th?
16th, as I had to
16th,
check.
16th. And, you know, he's good on static ground, level ground. And then he's taken his game to the next level, walking on the bed, which is both amazing and a little frightening. But I'm like, well, I might as well just teach him to jump off the edge of the bed and,
Yeah, of
into my
course.
arms, right? Uh, he knows how to get down off the bed safely, which is pretty impressive. But
On
then
his
the hill,
belly, he does the belly.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It just he gets down, awkwardly throws a leg over, kind of, sort
Yeah.
of shimmies down. It's it's awesome to see him do it. But then the other day, in fact, last night, but we've been there a few times. It's just this little hill right in the park, and he's walking 2 steps, and then he almost tumbles and rolls down the hill. He's like, "Oh, gravity, slope, like all these different things." It's just adorable to see it. But these iterative levels of the challenge to walk and then run and then be able to, you know, harness locomotion in his life and do all the fun things that we do as human beings. It's fun to see where he's at with it and where he needs to go.
Can, can I ask you how you responded when he tumbled, and if you're happy with your response, or if
Hmm.
you like?
I mean, he wasn't in danger. He's fallen once or twice and really bonked his head or whatever, his
Yeah, yeah,
body throughout the last 6 months. So there's times where you're like, oh, it kind of breaks your heart to see it, and you feel his pain and he's crying. But in this case, it was almost comical. He fell in the grass. We watched him kind of process that he fell, and he rolled onto his shoulder, and then he was on his back, kind of with his head down the hill just a bit. And I just studied him more than anything. I didn't worry about him because it was low risk, low danger.
yeah,
I just watched him solve the puzzle. Just like,
yeah,
how's he gonna do it? And if at a certain point, lost his if he lost his shit and was crying and frustrated, I would tend to him.
yeah.
But
Of course.
Mackenzie was probably 5 or 10 feet away up the hill, and I was pretty close to him, and I looked up at her and we laughed because
Yeah,
he was disoriented, and then eventually he reconciled his situation and continued trying to walk down the hill and fell again, and so
yep. Attaboy.
yeah.
That's one of my favorite expressions on specifically my daughter's face, because she can walk, is when when she's fallen and she's startled, like she's a little scared, but like she knows she's okay and she's just trying to make sense of what just happened. Just like when they're not injured, in Leonidas's case.
Yeah.
And then you just see it's like this, you get to see that process of just like life coming at them real fast and trying to figure out what to do with it.
Yeah, and you wonder just what's actually going through their brain. If they could somehow articulate it, what would they say? And if we could tap into it. So Kip, I'm curious, in recent times or all the way back, 2 years ago with your daughter in mind, what are some of the messiest or most challenging aspects of fatherhood, of being a father, which I recognize you're also a husband to a beautiful, amazing human being. So there's probably something in there in the relationship realm. Maybe that's two categories for us to explore: challenges or messiness related to partnering with your spouse and being truly in the role of fatherhood with your kiddos. What comes to mind?
I've got a few. I think I'll start with, since you gave me the prompt of relationship. I think so. So I think like growing up as a young man that thought he knew a lot, you would hear older people talk to you about different things specifically relating to marriage or child rearing, that would just kind of like you'd hear and you'd be like, well, like that sounds interesting. I guess I'll figure that one out. Or I'd just be like, what are you talking about? Like, there's no way that's a thing. And I think people, my experience has been, and I totally understand it, is that people don't always want to be so prescriptive with it. They'll just like give you little cues of like things to look out for, like roadblocks that are coming, and then it's our job to sort of figure it out when we get there.
Hmm.
And I think one of those that I have felt to be very present, especially as I'm now a father to 2 children, is experiencing the dynamic change between my wife and I. And we kind of, you go from being young and in love, and it's just the two of you, everything's about your little adventure together, and that remains constant, but now these new variables come in and the dynamic changes, and the way I kind of have described it is like you go from being a couple to running an institution together. And having to the need to put more effort into the relationship. It's not as effortless. We can't just hop over to a restaurant anytime we want, or do whatever it takes, planning to get that time of specific connection, or even just to have a conversation before you go to bed. You're exhausted, up to your elbows in diaper cream, and just ready to go to bed. So we don't, you don't always have a conversation before you go to bed. You just crash. So having to be more intentional with each other to just maintain a positive relationship, I think, has been an obstacle, and we're doing it. Like, we've definitely experienced challenges along the way, but it's working. Like, we're doing it. But it was, I think, that was I don't want to say a shock, but that's been one of the most present experiences of the whole thing. I feel very lucky that my wife and I have just we have a lot of romance and a lot of connection, and we always have, from like the first time we spent time alone together. I would even use the word magic. Like, there's a spark of magic between us, and if you're lucky enough to have that with your partner, which I think many people are, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And so it's like, I don't want to lose that. And like, there's times where it's less bright, maybe, but it's like, well, okay, well, what do we got to do to stoke the flames? Because like, that's it, right? That's what that sustains the institution. So that's been definitely something to navigate.
I wonder how many people hear this and go, "Oh yeah, I remember that." Because I mean, we're right in the thick of that, and I love my wife dearly, and she returns the sentiment, and but the relationship is different, and we call
Yeah.
it out, we talk about it, we acknowledge it. And as we were warming up, we talked about this a bit, but there's this meme floating around that I've seen on Instagram where you kind of you're like, where have you gone? Like, where's my partner gone? I almost forgot who they are because all attention is on this new dynamic. And to just recognize that and then think, well, it's not like it's dead. It's not like that person's no longer in your world. So what is there to do to maintain the romance and even fire it up? I don't know what with Talia's now a mama. It's like, how do you what have you done to acknowledge and celebrate her as now not just your partner, your lover, your spouse, but the mother of your children? Are there is there anything special you've done that you felt was kind of an ode to you're now a mom, you're now a mother, and I just want to recognize that. What do you think?
So the first Mother's Day that we had. I collected all the photos that I had, or the best photos of her and our daughter together, to just because it's very cool, to be able to see the spark of motherhood come alive in someone who previously was not a mother. they
Sure.
and then you see like the lioness mother kind of emerge out of them, and it's really, in my experience, starting with her roaring the child out of her body, which is
Truly.
just, it was an amazing sight to see, and just like watch her just birth this child, to
Kip,
rear.
what was your role in that, by the way? So observer from afar, right in the thick of it all. How did you partake?
It's interesting. I mean, generally our approach to the institution, I'm not going to call it the institution, I don't like that. But our approach to running our family is very shared. A lot of dividing and conquer, a lot of overlap, but shared for sure. uh, but in this case, you're kind of, I mean, as a man, it's kind of her thing, and you're just there to support and do whatever she needs. And so that was, I wanted to, we talked about it before, and she, we had a doula, we had midwives and all of that. For my son, we had midwives, doula, and doctor. And so, we had this medical staff, we had the support. And my wife made it clear that she wanted me to be as hands-on as be the hands-on person whenever possible. Again, we have this, we have a very good connection, the two of us, and a lot of trust. And so I took that seriously, to the point of, I was together with the midwife, but actually caught my daughter out of my wife.
Amazing.
Um, and just, but it was a lot of, it's a very interesting thing to be, because there's a certain caregiver nature in my relationship with my wife. I mean, it goes back and it goes both ways, but that's certainly a part of it. And so you're seeing her in pain, screaming, pushing, grunting, struggling, thriving, but struggling, and wanting to support and not being really able to do much. So
Truly.
I was the support physical that she could hang on when she needed to hang on something. When she was in the tub, I was behind her rubbing her back. When she wanted me to stop rubbing her back, I was the guy that stopped rubbing her back. I was
Totally.
I just, essentially put myself aside and what I wanted for a little bit, because this was really her time to shine. And just try to support as much as possible, step out of the way. A good lesson for fatherhood.
Yeah, no
Support,
doubt.
get out of the
Well, I mean,
way.
you were as in it as you could be in it, especially when you're catching your daughter. What a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
some dads aren't as involved, all good, no judgment, just a little bit of a spectrum there. And you were in the
yeah.
midst
I
of,
like being in
yeah,
it.
cool. So tell me, you're going to finish that thought. I interrupted a little bit, but you know, um, where the relationship and motherhood and honoring her motherhood, where have you taken that?
So I think so, you know, my wife and I are not the most ceremonial people. We're a little bit more everyday people when it comes to things like this. It's just the way we do it. Like not even necessarily intentionally. So, there are moments, on Mother's Day to like, okay, like, we'll honor, you very specifically in this way. But for me, it's primarily an everyday thing. Again, I'm not the best at this all the time, but I try to remember to encourage her. She's got a lot on her plate right now. She's breastfeeding our son. She's waking up at night to feed him. That's not easy. So to try to just encourage her, to remind her that she's good and she's got it, and that I'm here to support as she needs, to gently point out when maybe something could shift that might help her a little bit, and then be open to the conversation of it if she disagrees. But I think the word that keeps coming to mind is encouragement. I think we all need that when we're doing the tough stuff, and especially in these early months of child rearing. I think that's the primary role I'm trying to play, is encouragement.
Totally. What's it like having effectively two under two or two, your daughter is a little over two, I get,
Mhm.
but
A
that
tad, like,
some people said two under two is madness. And,
yeah.
some people space it out a little bit, either incidentally or on purpose or whatever. But so what's it like having two just adorable, but also needy little creatures, human creatures in your world?
So I think so. I've purposed not to ever complain about fatherhood, because I chose this. I want this. It's like arguably the best thing that's ever happened to me. And but not so I want to like own it and appreciate it, but that doesn't mean not acknowledging the difficulties of it.
Mm.
Madness at times. That was the at times, but it's definitely. I mean, all I can say is it's a lot. And I think it's both beautiful because you get to see the interaction of the two of them, and it's like you've got two things. I'm watching my daughter. You know, she just started formulating full sentences, and is gaining. She's learning to hang from bars at gymnastics and do all these new and dynamic and wonderful things. And my son is just this little smiling ball of joy that I just get to jostle around. He really likes being jostled and tickle and play with. Today he's in one of those springy like holder things, and was just kept kicking his legs and
Yeah.
laughing because he
Yeah.
just
Oh,
likes
amazing.
being jerked around. Uh, so yeah, so you get this like dynamic new layer to parenting, because you get multiple things happening at once, and kind of getting to shift gears very quickly. And the allotness of it is just that there's always something. I think I told people that my productivity went down by about 33%, or about by a third, when my daughter was born. And
Yes.
I wouldn't say it's gone down another third, but it's whatever new factor is in, of like, okay, I have less time. There's now, instead of being it being a lot, and then there's like reprieve, unless I'm on a podcast, then there's just always something.
Always.
It's like always something. And so it's another level of putting your own, not entirely, but putting your own, minimizing your own needs for the greater good, the greater cause of the family, realizing that I have to say no to more things. I don't have capacity, but that's also opened up a new door for me that I would say I've replaced FOMO with focus.
Hmm.
Um, I have a wide range of interests, and I think I've never been diagnosed, but I assume I'm hyperactive. Like I'm a mover, and I'm always shifting gears to new ideas and new topics, for better or for worse.
Mhm.
And so I basically, there's a lot of FOMO of like, oh, I could be doing this. Oh, but I also want to make a new movie. Oh, but I also want to like read this article. Oh, but I also want to do this. Oh, I also want to launch this project. Oh, I also want to do whatever. And it's made me say, what do I really want to do, and how do I focus in? And so like I'm thinking of this kind of now as we're talking. Like it's on one hand, the challenges have limited my abilities in certain ways, but that's actually opened a door to a level of focus that I didn't know was possible until now. Uh,
No doubt about it.
yeah, it has kind of ramped things up quite a bit.
Well, yeah, having a kid or two or five is the ultimate forcing function for us to really be deliberate and intentional in how we spend our time, our energy, our resources, and um, I suppose this you were kind of touching on it with your just those observations, but I'm just imagining the Kipp Adler world right now. You've got two kids, you've got a wife, you have we're technically sitting or you're sitting in an Airbnb or a short-term rental property that you now are about to put on the market with awesome art, and you were saying you customize the whole, the experiences there, which is a way to differentiate the short-term rental market demands that you have a cool experience. You said a working typewriter, records, cool vibes. So I know you're doing that. Plus, you run your business. You're seeking new clients. You're putting together new content. Uh, so conceptually, I think anyone listening would appreciate. Gosh, you do really have to be thoughtful with your time, organized, focused. But are there specific tactics or even tools that you're using to help you stay attuned and then to execute? I mean, how are you organizing your day and your life?
So I think that the primary tool that I use is just prioritization, I guess, and that goes back to the concept of focus. And so I think I've compartmentalized, I've mentally compartmentalized my task list much better. Again, like I keep going back to this. I'm a creative. I run a business, and I do, I have to have the logical, and I produce, films and projects. Like I have to have the logical side. My natural tendency, like logical, practical details, making things happen. But my natural tendency, gun to my head, which would I do? I want the creative, fun, abstract stuff. And so that's where I thrive the most. And so it's been very good to I've had to elevate the practical producer side of my brain, the CEO side, I guess, or the operations COO side, of my brain, and it's been great actually. So I sort of have started to compartmentalize what I focus on. And then also like I've started a new thing of like I have a new project that I'm launching creatively, professionally. Now but I was not focused on it until the rental was set up. So it was prioritization. Okay, this is my primary focus is getting this on the market, because once it's on the market, working with a management company, it's essentially passive income. Nothing's really ever passive, but passive. Okay, so that's a good goal now, because that then empowers me for the next thing. So then I sort of swing to the next monkey bar. Um, and so now that I'm focused on this creative project, which has certain themes, relating to my background in journalism in the Middle East and all of that, I love reading. So when a new book, and I buy, as most people who love reading probably do, way more books than I'm ever going to read. So anytime I'm on Amazon or someone recommends a book, I ask myself a simple question. Does it have to do with this creative vision and like this expertise that I'm trying to lean into, of like, Middle East and the future of the Middle East? Or how to create content that's growth oriented and it performs well and all those things. Those are kind of the two aspects that I'm focusing on professionally now. So if the book does not, I don't read it. I don't buy it. That's a new thing for me because I'm also very interested in just like exploring psychology and the human experience. And so if someone recommends some book, I'm very curious about it, and the my Kipp nature wants to just like, yeah, now I'm going to read that book. And I have like 5 books sitting on my on my nightstand that I read like a page of a night, but then I switch between them. And so now that's narrowed down to 2 books. So that's prioritization, categorization, systemifying things, working towards less active income, working towards setting up teams and systems in ways that I don't have to be as present, which is difficult for me because I love what I do and I love the details. And as most people, my general thought is, well, nobody's going to do it as well as I can. It's like, well, but I can't do everything. So, and some people do things better than me, which is great. So, trying to step out of as many things as are reasonable within business and focus on the things that I really need to focus on. Yeah, I mean, I think it's systemifying things.
And to get really practical, are you doing all this in your head, on paper, in a notes app on your phone? How are you actually capturing, these lists of priorities and so forth?
So I've found Asana to be very useful. I'm not a huge software and tool guy, and I'm teaching myself to be, because I think it's valuable. I'm learning that time spent learning the application is worthwhile if the application ends up being worthwhile. And that's often what hinders me.
Mm-hmm.
So I do a lot of organizing on Google Docs and stuff, and just kind of keep my own folders. But I found Asana to be very practical,
Gotcha.
and very user friendly. So that's primarily it, aside from like editing softwares, and like Google Analytics when needed and things like that.
Totally. Well, and just thinking about all the realms in our lives and all the information that's out there, all the interests, all the to-dos, it's crazy if you really think about it and zoom out, especially when you add some kiddos to the mix. And I just came across this acronym PKM, which many people probably already are wildly familiar with, but personal knowledge management. So how do you keep everything organized so that then you can be productive and be focused? And when something random comes into your mind, or you're on the podcast with your friend Dave and I bring up a book, you're like, well, that one day I want to get to that. So
Mhm.
how do I tend to it now in the moment and not neglect it and lose it forever, but not let it then distract me? So a
Mhm.
great friend of mine who's just in town, you would adore him. He's a content creator, lives in New York City, does all sorts of playful stuff. I call him the king of play, which he humbly says, like, that's just way too bold. I could never tell people I'm the king of play. But he
It's a
to
great
me,
title.
yeah, he to me is the king of play. His name is Thaddeus Brooks Anderson. He's got so many little projects in his mind, initiatives, ideas, that he realized, gosh, if I don't actually organize them intentionally, and then a PKM, a personal knowledge management process, uses Asana. That's one of the core tools. But then the goal is almost to have, um, and this is my initial understanding, right? But a place to store thoughts, ideas, information, but then to also be able to relate them. You can organize things as a
Hmm.
project. It could just be its
Right.
own idea. It could be an area of your life that you want to work on, and then to be able to see visually, like a mind map in essence, of the previously they were disparate connections, but now that you can see them, you realize, oh, look at all of that. And it can
Right.
actually help you focus and make smarter decisions to say, well, it turns out if I actually do this domino here, it's going to affect 3 things over here. I didn't see those connections, but now I can see those. So it helps you really prioritize with greater integrity, perhaps, and then execute in theory.
Is
And I'm
is this
like,
Asana specifically you're talking about?
no, this is like
No.
a philosophy or an
Oh, philosophy.
approach
Okay.
to managing our lives. So it's a personal knowledge management strategy. And then Asana, I know it's used as a project management tool uh, in many, businesses or on teams, but you can use Asana
Yeah.
as a solution or a platform for your personal knowledge management, right? And some
Yes.
people just use notes on their iPhone, right?
Yeah.
Or a note-taking tool, or Google, you could do it there too. But it just front and center in my life, like how am I going to, I know I have a lot that I can accomplish that I want to accomplish, but I also have to tend to a different version of my life now. And
Hmm.
how do I just stay, organized and not get disoriented and frustrated or confused and stay, lined up. So,
Well, that's one. So my two favorite parts of Asana. So I assume this is kind of reading between the lines that you're referencing this, but is how you can interconnect the tasks.
hmm,
So like when you're running, I just was working on a big project, and it involved a lot of steps and phases and people and a few different departments. And to, when you just look at the task list, which is my second favorite part of or my other favorite part of Asana, when you just look at the task list, it can be overwhelming, and especially if you're not great at organizing what you're going to focus on, it's just like you could just end up working on something that doesn't need to be done until later, and or like I think we all have these procrastination tendencies of like, oh, that's an easy task I can do. I'm going to do that one instead. But when you see it, when it's all connected and you have the prioritization of it, you know what you need to do next. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying about the upfront time it takes to, I mean, I think we spent, I mean, the project manager, the production coordinator did it, but spent like almost a month or a couple of weeks, like organizing the project, creating the project. And it was a lot of back and forth of like, well, what do we need to do? And answering questions. But that effort was so worthwhile because then it wasn't necessarily plug and chug, but there was a lot less thinking involved in how we proceed to the next phase. And that's,
makes
yeah,
sense.
find it very useful.
Well, it's
Mapping.
funny. Yeah, why wouldn't we approach executing in our personal lives and our like your family institution the same
Hmm.
way we're running our business and our organization? We're being methodical, we're defining a process, we're getting aligned on what's important. So you and Talia maybe getting aligned, having that conversation weekly or monthly or every day perhaps, and then you set up a sequence of events, right? And I think that's
Hmm.
inherently that's happening for me right now. And as I mentioned earlier, having kids is a forcing function. So in my
Yeah.
mind, it's fairly clear what I got to do on any given day. But I think to be a little bit more deliberate about it, there's something for me to explore with my wife and tie into a tool or two, at least a shared thinking process, and then maybe an asana or something like that. So
Well,
Kip, oh yeah, go
okay.
ahead.
Well,
What
it's
do
an
you think?
interesting thing because I've actually been speaking about this with a very good friend of mine. It's an interesting question, and like as you can tell, like I like exploring ideas. So it's like you brought up something interesting of like running your family like an institution, which I think is a very valuable tool. And the other side of that is that my family is also sort of my escape from all that. It's
Yeah,
like it's the beauty and the fun and the fluffy stuff that requires a lot of tasks and a lot of tools. I don't have an answer to this. It's just you talking kind of sparked this idea of like how much, to what extent is our family life like the safe place from the task list and the safe place from all that, and in what sense do we need to recognize that we are running an institution or whatever,
yep.
and get with the program and systemize it up. And it's an interesting back and forth.
Something to ponder with everyone who, if you have a partner or even if you're running things solo, it's just like how do you turn it into a little bit more of a method and a process so that then you can go off and just have family time where you're not thinking about anything and you're just
Exactly.
saturating yourself with the joys of parenthood. So, Kip, I just want
I
to shift because we went
Okay.
so far. It was
Yeah, we
awesome,
did.
but I asked, some of the messiest aspects of fatherhood. How about in the actual realm of being a dad? What have been some of the messiest, most challenging experiences you've had? And I mean, it's only 2 years ago, so I invite you to go all the way back to the beginning, that are worth, you know, identifying, showcasing, honoring, and people hearing about. What would you say?
So I'm trying to now recall, now that we've been talking, because I know we spoke about different things in the warm-up. Have I talked about when my daughter was first born and was having some challenges?
I want to hear
Uh,
about that. Tell me about that.
Okay. So I think I remember, I don't, it's interesting when you look back on experiences. I think nature has developed this beautiful thing where we don't always feel the pain anymore. But I very distinctly remember sending a text to my dad saying, I think this is the most difficult period of my life that I've been through yet. I don't remember feeling that, but I remember sending my dad the text message, and I must have felt that, if that makes sense. So my daughter was born. We were new parents, first child. Um, so all that's overwhelmingness or overwhelmed of all of that. We were in the midst of it. We were very, my wife tends to take a bit more of the brunt. She's the one with the milk. So she tends to take a bit more of the brunt with the feedings and the night shifts, and all of that. But we were definitely switching back and forth. I was playing a significant role in it at that stage, because my daughter was just constantly crying and seemed to be dissatisfied. And we were talking to experts and doctors and trying to figure it out. And couldn't figure it out. And it was just so incredibly difficult to know that this new person that's suddenly the most important thing in your life is just, you're not able to fix it. You're not able to make them okay, and you can't figure it out. And there's no answer. And so, we were taking her to different appointments. We eventually found out that it was a feeding issue. She had a tongue tie that was resolved. And then just training her to eat properly after months of having a tongue tie was another phase of the journey. Not knowing if it's going to work, but essentially it was just my daughter was unable to be, at nighttime specifically, just to be content. Come to find out, it's because she was hungry, which is its own tragedy because we didn't know, and we didn't know at the time. And so you're like, oh, okay, so she just was hungry for months, just unable to, and she was growing, and she was on the trajectory. So she was able to get enough food, but, that she was dissatisfied. She wasn't getting everything she needed, and we couldn't give it to her because we didn't know how. And I think that was hands down the messiest, phase, if that's the right word, just because it was like, as I'm looking back now, the kind of pain of it is resurfacing, of just the difficulty of it. And I think, as a father, I'm sure you can relate, and I know you and Leonidas and Mac had your own very intense challenge in the early days of his life, the very beginning of his life. So you can relate to that pain of just like, it's not like I can't, it's not working, and I don't know what to do to make my child okay.
For the tongue tie, did you all address that with, call it like physical therapy and learning how to position the baby? Or I know sometimes the tongue tie actually gets addressed in a surgical fashion.
Yes, I can't remember what it's called. We did so I'm certain I'm forgetting steps. There were a lot of different avenues that we took to solve this issue, including meeting with feeding specialists and learning how to try to get her to breastfeed, realizing that breastfeeding wasn't going to work anymore for her because of her physical condition. And this is my own assessment, because we did the procedure to release the tongue tie, and she still was having issues. So we had to switch to a bottle from breastfeeding. And so it was like trying to realize that breastfeeding wasn't going to cut it. And so, my assessment was that she, and again, my unprofessional opinion was that she had gone on for long enough that it was like she had trained how to feed, with what she had. And so now that she had the physical capability to use her tongue properly, she wasn't able to learn the new way. So we switched to a bottle. We would get inserts for the bottle to make sure that it was flowing properly for her and not causing too much gas. And it was just a ton of steps and a ton of appointments and a ton of meetings. She was growing the whole time. Thank God it was not like, this like a life-threatening scenario or something like that, but it was definitely something that needed to be resolved. And they told us she'll likely have trouble eating, which was not the case, like when it came to solid foods. But she's fine now, long story short.
Gosh, it's got to be hard to hear from specialists and doctors who, it's funny how, I don't know if there's any doctors listening. It's like that bedside manner of, gosh, she's likely going to have problems. that kind of
Yeah.
declaration. You're like, ah, on top of all this, I now have to worry about that instead of,
Hmm.
there's a chance that this will continue and we'll guide you through this process if that's the case.
Right.
Because I just think about the role as new parents out of everything. Of course, you're, protecting them and so forth, but you're providing sustenance. And
Hmm.
and frankly, not you, Kip, not Dave, although
Right.
you can hold the bottle, but in this
Right.
case, our partners are producing the fuel. It's a beautiful thing. It's kind of cosmically wild to think about
Yes.
that our wives are consuming. And my wife was like, "Hey, I'm eating for two, by the way, so give me another, like, order me
Yeah,
two burgers, or I
that's
want,
correct.
if you're not
Get
going to
that
eat that
protein.
steak." Yeah, exactly. uh, and then to see it not go well between uh, the parents, to see their kiddo, struggling, but not even having the clarity of what's happening until you went through all this process and had, endless meetings and whatnot. Like, just living in that uncertainty and that unknowing is tough. And then I wonder what Talia would say if she was sitting here with us, because my experience being the partner to Mackenzie and, her husband, we came out of the NICU, and 11 days in the NICU, he was uh, feeding through a feeding tube at one point. Actually, it was in through his nose, but and then he was learning to suckle on the breast, but for whatever reason, it wasn't going well, and it could have been just a bit of trauma and energy in the NICU. And then we also had a couple, uh, what are they called? Specialists for breastfeeding. Um, there's an actual term for it, but four or five different women came in, and they just they're like, "Oh, this is how you got to do it." And they would shove his head on her breast. And it was like, I don't think that's, here's how you get him to latch. And then it wouldn't work. Right. And so after the
Yep.
fact, Mac continued to try to build that rhythm with Leo. And it was a bit of a struggle. And we wondered about a tongue tie. We went and got some cranial sacral therapy, which is kind of like chiropractic, and had him adjusted a few times as well.
We did also.
Um, and man, it the toll it took on my wife as the ultimate provider of sustenance and the one experiencing failure in those moments, that was probably the hardest thing, was to watch her. And Leo ended up fine, and now he's this hardy little dude, kind of like you're saying your daughter's in great shape. It's like, so nothing bad happened, but to watch her in that turmoil was probably the hardest and messiest piece of the puzzle
Yeah.
so far. Did you
Yeah,
relate to that? Was Talia?
very much so. I wouldn't want to speak for her, but it was definitely in observing her, much like you observed Mackenzie, like, so I know for her, the choice, was to breastfeed. And we have a very good friend who's French, and the culture there is much less attached to breastfeeding, and who never breastfed her kid. It was not her desire, and she didn't want to, and that was her choice, and that's totally fine. In this case, it was my wife's, that's what she wanted to. That was, and so to witness something that she wanted so badly, to be able to provide, and I assume it has to be, I mean, I'm not a mother, but I assume it has to be one of the major biological triggers. It's just, I need to give this child what it needs. That's how we've survived as a species. So for her to be denied of the ability to fulfill that when she wanted it so badly was very challenging to watch. And I mean, talk about encouragement and support, and of no fault of her own,
Hmm.
of just the way that our daughter's tongue came together in the womb, uh, that to see that sort of, I don't want to, I mean, her unable to do that was very difficult for her primarily, and me as her support. Um, then on the other hand, it's been beautiful because my son does not have a tongue tie, and he breastfeeds very well. And to see that she was willing to give it up because it was the best thing for our daughter, and she realized that. And then to see it gifted back to her with our son, is kind of comes full circle, which has been very beautiful.
That's awesome. I bet she feels at peace with your son, just hitting the ground running in a way when it
Yeah.
comes to to feeding. So you had there was a second example you gave me in our warm up, but I want to almost frame up in terms of the messiness of fatherhood. You gave me a second example,
Hmm.
but I feel like there's a bigger question that we explored that the messy example feeds into, which was what about the experience of fatherhood? What has that revealed to you about yourself and the lessons about what it means to be Kipp Adler? So one of the messy things, and I'll just give you something to jump off from, was now you're learning to be more patient because you want to teach your kids how to ask for things nicely, or your 2-year-old
Hmm.
in particular.
Hmm.
And guiding them to do that requires you to be patient. You also
Yes.
noted letting go of expectations. So can you just give me off the cuff some anecdotes or some examples of what you've learned about yourself as a result of being a father? What is fatherhood calling out of Kipp Adler that maybe you had a touch of in the past, but now you must, you must rely on it. You must draw upon it more than ever. What would those things be?
Um, the increased variables of raising children, making my old ways of controlling and organizing my life no longer functional. And if that's not clear, I think what I'm trying to say is that the ampl amplification of what's required of me to function day to day has gone up so much that I need new methods, I need new tools, and perhaps some less healthy ones or functional for the time ones just don't get to cross over into
Hmm.
this new version of life that I'm in.
Do you have an example, by
Which
the way? What's that?
uh, yes, I think well, it has to do with letting go of what you're talking about. So it's like that to, the amplification and being able to manage the variables of just realizing I can't control as much as I once could, nor
Yep.
should I, nor is it beneficial. And I think so. One actual very specific example would be what you were kind of talking about a moment ago of the doctor saying, well, they're going to have challenges feeding down the road. And, let's call it the old Kipp, who's still, alive at times. But the old Kipp, that would have worried me and just been on my mind. And I would have written lists and made notes, of like, okay, so now in 6 months down the road, or however many months down the road, these are the things I need to worry about. And I'm going to try to solve them now
Yep.
and all of that. I can't like I've just learned if I did that for every potential problem that was going to be down the road for my kids, I would lose my mind. So I'm much more capable now of saying, okay, that's a later thing. Right now we're focusing on this. It's in my mind, noted, keep an eye out for it, prepare what's necessary, deal with it later.
Mhm.
And back to what we were talking about before about compartmentalization of just shifting priorities and compartmentalizing what I focus on and what I'm concerned about um, has been huge. Um, and then that feeds into this overall theme, which I've touched upon of fatherhood, which is how uh, like the this guidance versus direction that we were talking about of like how involved am I and how not involved am I. So I'm trying to tie it together a lot of things that you've asked into all of this because it brings everything into this one very simple story of this weekend of my daughter on the curved monkey bar ladder thing at the playground, whatever that is, that kind
Yep.
of goes like this and has the rungs on it. So in this attempt to figure out how hands-on and how much I just let her do her thing and figure her own thing out, I am with her. I was letting her climb on it. My natural instinct, as I was imagining her face smacking against one of the bars, if she fell, my natural instinct was to stand right over her and like have my arms near her. But I realized, at least in my mind, that was not the most empowering. Like, will she learn this skill if I'm right there, just and hovering over her? So, but also I don't want her to smack her face. So I was nearby, kept an eye on things, and she was climbing up the ladder and then she did fall and she fell and my heart skipped a beat for a moment as and she just caught herself on the two bars on the side. uh and it was just like the I wouldn't even call it excitement because I don't think that's deep enough of a word to explain like the feeling that welled up in me of just like, yeah, like you just did that, like you just stopped yourself from an injury. I didn't even have to do it. And she got scared and nervous and started crying, and I scooped her up and was making sure she was okay. But the words I was saying to her is you were scared and you did it and you caught yourself. Look, you learned that in gymnastics and you did that. And like, oh, I know you're scared. It's okay, but I'm so proud of you. Like, wow, that was a great job. Like you did it. You did it. And that's kind of, yeah.
Oh, that's
Hopefully
awesome.
that coalesces kind of everything you were asking. It was a great moment. It happened this weekend.
That's amazing. Yeah, just to shower them in your the impressiveness that they created for you. It's like that was amazing. Good job. Because,
Yeah.
I'm sure there was a little bit of tension there for you. You had said something earlier in our warm up about letting go of perfection, which I just want you to riff on. Like, beforehand, you could set up the perfect date night or the perfect vacation or and there's still subjectivity in everything we do, but now there's, you know, getting somewhere on time, getting somewhere with no, who knows, a blowout in the car seat or, a kiddo, losing a shoe or whatever. It's like there's all sorts of extra stuff now in our world that your approach to or your desire for perfection is shifted. So, what's your sense of, what how you're interacting with perfection these days?
I would say it's one of those just things that are said that you hear that kind of make more sense or for me have made more sense as I've gotten older. And that's that the kind of the beauty of life is its imperfection. And that's what I would say of kind of like the old skills versus the new skills and then the variables being more nuanced. Is that like I just can't there's certain level of perfectionism that must be let go of in order to live for me to live the life that I want to live and experience the emotions and the beauty of it. I have to let go of it to a certain extent. Obviously, maintain things, make sure things are done well and to a high degree, but not think the beauty of life is in its imperfection. I think Leonard Cohen said it well that there's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Um,
Hmm.
so that I think that it's no longer a choice, like I can't control everything, and never could, but
Yes, I was
it,
waiting for that. Yeah, like let's admit it. Yeah.
perhaps I can't live with the illusion that I can anymore. I can't fool
Ah,
myself into thinking that. Um, and that's kind of, I mean, that's the ride, right? Like, I mean, of life, right? I think this child experience, and you can get it in many other ways. There's plenty of people that don't have children that have learned these lessons, but that's the ride of life that we're on. That I think since I'm letting it, it's been a fast track to embracing that, and
hmm.
it has set me free in many ways. I mean, I don't use that loosely or lightly. Like it's been intentional. It's set me free. I've harnessed that to set me free from the shackles of not being okay with imperfection, I guess.
Hmm.
And it's sort of opened my heart and my mind to just uh, the surfing of it all, just like getting your
Yes.
surfboard out and just I'm riding it. I don't know. I could fall. That's kind of the fun. Like,
Yes.
yeah. So
Yeah,
I think,
fatherhood's like the ultimate go with the flow experience. As much as you
yeah.
want to go one direction or another, you kind of have to go with the flow a little bit. But there's a balance between being intentional and going with the flow that maybe each of us is sorting through, perhaps. Because I still want people, and I still think there's value for me to be intentional about how I raise my kids and what I show them and the experiences I create for them. But then in any given moment, I still need to be able to go with the flow because there's so many more variables as you so nicely said. So I mean, I
Well,
want to hear a little bit because we're talking almost about as a father, what kind of um, leadership skills are you drawing upon that perhaps you've had historically, or what kind of uh, what kind of leadership skills do you almost realize you're insufficient in order to best be the best father you can? How do you maybe level up certain things? And so that's almost what we've been covering. But now I want to hear a little bit about how are you imparting leadership on your kiddos? And frankly, at 2, yours and the 4 month old, maybe you aren't doing anything explicitly, but I'd love to hear from your perspective, Kipp, about what the world needs now out of our youngsters, our this next generation, and to almost steward the world forward. What are some of the key things you want to impart as leadership skills, and how do you anticipate doing that? Uh, Say generally, and then with the times that we're in. So, what would be those leadership skills you want your kids to have? How do you anticipate empowering them with those, teaching them those, guiding them to foster them?
So the deep breath here is not lack of a response, but where do I go with this response? There's so
Awesome.
much to, I'm taking a moment to try to see where to focus here. I it definitely has to do with the dynamic nature of leadership, and flexibility and strength through flexibility and humility. And I mean, you're right. Like I have a 2-year-old and a 4 month old. I'm not like teaching them to be leaders, but I am also because
Right
in
on.
training them to be humans, I want them to have autonomy over their choices, to have flexibility and humility, right? Because being a leader requires confidence. The buck stops here kind of thing. And the buck in here, you can also make wrong choices, and that's okay. That's kind of what not what you're supposed to do as a leadership, but it's par for the course. Like
Sure.
you need to confidently move forward with imperfection or something that may not be the perfect choice, but it is the best choice you can make in that moment, which then often leads to potential course correction from a lesson learned from it not working out like you expect. And so that dynamic nature is what I'm trying to instill. I want to instill that into the nature of my children, or I should say, draw it out of them. Um,
Cool. I like that.
and I actually have had the privilege of connecting with a gentleman that I encountered through your podcast. Mark, how do you pronounce his last name? I actually, Guay,
Gway. Yep. Mark Gway.
Guay, Mark Guay.
Absolute champ. He's awesome.
Champ. I have become very fond of him, and we were discussing this sort of word picture of leadership, and like where I want to go as a leader, and through animal analogy.
Oh,
And
cool.
there's starting with the rhino and leading towards the otter. That's the kind of picture that is very helpful for me, of like a
Cool.
rhino is, I'm sorry, not rhino, turtle, like one of those big ones that you see at the zoo.
Okay.
And I say that in a good way. Don't think of the slow tortoise. Think of the strong, steady
The mighty
tortoise.
turtle.
Yes. So like one foot in front of the other. Steady, slow and steady wins the race.
Mm,
Calloused skin, has weathered some storms, making decisions. And I think there is a time and a place for that type of leadership in action.
mm.
My goal, and where I feel like I'm hesitant to say have gotten to, but I feel like I am experiencing, or at a level of, is moving more towards the otter nature, which the otter can go left and right and up and down quickly. The otter is ferocious,
I was gonna say.
and knows how to defend itself, and knows how, like, it's not it's not just like a little, they're not huge, but they are ferocious animals when necessary. But I think primarily we think of otters as playful and fun, and they enjoy life, and they swim around and they play with each other and they hold hands and they do all this fun stuff. And that's, for me, that's the goal in leadership, is like I have the ferocity. That's necessary at times. We live in a tough world, fierce world. And if we want to impact change, we need to know when the time is, to be ferocious, which is few and far between, I should say. But, there is a time for that side of things. And so that you have that. But primarily it's playfulness and it's enjoyment and it's dynamic movement and up, down, left, and right, flexibility with where we are. Am I on land? Am I in the water? I can do both. That's I think probably says more. Pictures worth 1,000 words. I think that says more than I could to just describe it. Of like, what I want my children to be, otters, and to learn to be otters.
Oh, cool. That's great. So then that's agility, uh, ingenuity, you might say, a ferociousness, but also a gracefulness. How is that showing up for your 2-year-old lately? And maybe your 4 month old, but there's more, I think, experience, I suspect, with your 2 year old to draw upon.
So I don't know if other fathers can relate to this. I like when my daughter says no and challenges me with things, or when she stands her ground and wants things. Again, my son is 4 months old. He doesn't really say no. But I think like brushing her teeth. I'll just use that as an example. That's the first one that comes to mind. She needs to brush her teeth. Like that's something that I need to accomplish. I need to make sure it's accomplished before she
Yes.
goes to bed and when she wakes up in the morning. She does not like when I brush her teeth. And there was a point in time where I just, okay, you don't like it, we're doing it anyway,
Yeah.
that. And again, a time and a place for that. Uh, but she's at the point where she wants to do it herself, but she doesn't know how yet.
Mhm.
And so she refuses. This muscle, the lip muscle must be very strong on children because I can't get in there when
That's
she
funny.
closes her lips. So, okay, well, I don't really have much of a choice. My turn, she says. Okay, so like now I need to let go and teach her how to do it. And so it's like, so that sort of what I'm connecting that to in leadership, like, I mean, in this sense, I'm leading her, but the lesson perhaps that I can parse out of that as far as what I'm teaching her is like, okay, you have to do this thing. You don't want to do this thing. We're not going to just not do it. So it has to get done. So how are you going to get it done? And so like, I think there's a good method of like giving your children two choices, saying, okay, is it my turn or is it your turn? Who's going to do it? And so I guess I'm trying to think of what specifically the question is how is that ferociousness or how is that like autonomy showing up in my daughter?
Yeah, I suppose the question was, how are these desired leadership attributes that you want to instill in them, how are they revealing themselves? So I love this one, honestly, because it's like,
Yeah,
yes, in life, there's things that you must do, have to do, have no choice. And how do you then take ownership of that, take responsibility, and then the method might be subjective or up for the argument or whatever you'd say, but the outcome must be achieved, right?
right.
And so you're teaching them almost decision making, and I love, agency, autonomy just through toothbrushing.
Through toothbrushing. And she took ownership of it. That's, I guess, what I'm excited about is that she took ownership of it. So she acknowledges that this has to be done. She accepts that. She's, we're like, you're constantly kind of negotiating with your children.
Mhm.
So we're
Yes.
making a negotiation. Okay, I'll let go of me doing it because I think I'm going to do it better than she can. And I will now, I know how to brush teeth. She doesn't. And so now I'm letting go of that. And now I will empower you to do it. We also got her like tasty toothpaste. And so sometimes she just tries to sneak and just eat the toothpaste. And I'm like, no, 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 brush. You got to do the
Yeah.
brushing.
Oh, that's
But
funny.
she's taken ownership of it. And she looks at me and she's like this, like this. Okay, like this. And I'm like, oh, now you got to get the other side. And now you got to get the front. And so she's taken ownership of it. And it's cool because I've had to let go of this has to be done. I can't control it. I can't make it happen unless I have to like work through her. And she's doing her part and she's receiving the instruction and doing it, but she's setting her boundaries. She's saying, you're not going to do it for me. I'm going to do it. And it's actually, yeah, I hadn't thought about it at this level, but it's been a very cool experience.
When did you start brushing her teeth, by the way?
I think we did it with we asked the pediatrician because I think it was like when she had four maybe or something. There was some like we just
Yeah.
asked her and they doctors are great with that. Like our doctor was just like, well, when she has this many, don't worry about it until then.
Yeah, that's
Okay, cool.
we're right on the fringe of the toothbrush. But Leo will watch me. We both have these decent electric toothbrushes, right? And I'll be brushing my teeth, and he wants to hold it, and I'll hold his hand and my hand around it, and he's like, so we're trying to get him interested in the act, similar to from what we're learning, like potty training.
Yeah,
you want them almost interested in the toilet, which is kind of funny to think, but the toilet is like a friendly thing or an interesting
yeah.
thing or a playful thing that they don't need to avoid. They want to be familiar with it. So, okay, Kip, I'm just being thoughtful of time and recognizing what a what a pleasure it's been to riff with you, and we could keep gunning and running on
Yeah.
these topics. But I do have kind of an ultimate question for you to wrap up our time together. I just want you to picture there's going to be a time when your daughter and your son in the future decades from now, they're grown-ups, maybe they're 60 years old, 70 years old, and maybe you're beyond.
Hmm.
They're sitting around a campfire with their families, maybe another generation, maybe two generations or three generations, and they're sharing stories of who Kipp Adler was, or who Kipp Adler is to them and was. What are the three things you're known for that are story worthy? What does it sound like for them to celebrate and honor and highlight those things? Three things. How do they sound?
One is definitely he empowered me to be me. Like this is my children speaking. Like that's what I want. Like he empowered me to be me, whether that's directing or guiding, that would be one. Um, Playfulness is fun is a virtue to me. I think sometimes we think of it as a luxury,
Mm.
and we work so we can have fun. To me, fun should be infused into everything, and there's always a time for complete seriousness or what have you, but fun should be basically a part of everything. And I want to be thought of as fun. I want to think that like I was able to, in difficult times, lighten the mood and give them and make it playful, make it enjoyable, make it dynamic. Um, and then I think me to be me, but I'm not sure how to express this one exactly, but I do believe, I don't know what I think about spirituality and other worldliness and things like that. But to me, in my experience, whether it's all just in my brain or there's something else out there, there's like a different plane of consciousness that is just, I don't know, it's like the oneness, it's like detached from the kind of everyday and the mundane, and it's like an elevated consciousness. And I think we feel it in conversation when there's like real connection with people. I feel it in playfulness. um a lot of people experience it in prayer or meditation. But I think to empower transcendence or create transcendent moments, because I think work is very important, accomplishments are very important, doing things, being, all of that stuff is so huge. It's like the yin and the yang, right? You need both. uh but there's like, it's like, what are we doing here? Like life is so like, there's like this profound underlayer to everything, and I want to help bring more of that into my family's lives and everybody I encounter. That's very important to me.
If I'm translating accurately, let me know. So, empowerment, dad empowered us to just be awesome humans and live exciting lives. Dad was so silly and so fun. And then the third one is he gave us an awareness of existence, or an awareness of this human beingness that just allowed us to live a rich life. So is it awareness? Is that kind of what I was hearing?
Yeah, I would say transcendent awareness, or an awareness of transcendent existence. I think there's an experience. I mean, it's the reason we're having so much trouble with it is that's the whole point. Like, is that
Hmm.
these are the things that are so hard to define, and everybody experiences it in a different way. But I think there's a level of awareness to it, and there's a level of experience to it. Like it's something that you feel and you experience when maybe it's just love, maybe it's just like the deepest love that can exist. I think, you experience it a lot with connection between other people, but whatever that is for them, I don't know. I don't, but like that allows them to feel that life is special.
Nice. I dig it. Well, Kip, an absolute treat talking fatherhood with you. We've had a couple great things in common over the years: creativity and, being entrepreneurs and living adventurous lives. And now we have fatherhood to draw upon as a shared affinity. So I look forward to our next conversation about it all. Can't wait to hear as your kids grow up all the other lessons that you're gathering, and we'll have to do round two in the coming years.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you for having me on. Enjoyed it a lot.
Absolutely. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks, Kip.
Sounds good.
There you have it. That's been another episode of Whoa Dad, Go Dad. If you like what you're hearing, hit the like button, subscribe to the podcast so you get the future ones, and please spread the word and post this episode to your social networks. That's powerful. Perhaps the best thing you can do is share this directly with a new dad or a soon-to-be dad that you know personally. Let them know you're rooting them on. And indeed, drop a comment and be really a part of this dialogue on fatherhood with me. Let me know in the comments a question you want me to ask other dads, or just some feedback. How does this sound to you? What's helpful? What stands out about these conversations? I would appreciate that intel as I grow Whoa Dad, Go Dad. I've got many more episodes to come, and I'm so glad you're here. Looking forward to catching you on the next one.
Whoa, Dad, here we go now. Oh yeah, the ultimate roll now. Oh yeah, here we go now. Whoa, Dad, go, Dad.